We are looking at the busted ass LA Satis Nicknight build that has been tearing up the forums. Now, there are variations, and many people say they are busted, but this is the original, the one that is so far unsurpassed. Why are we looking at it? We want to make a Haterater build of it, but let's first explain what it is and why it is so feared. Because to a Dom 5 player, this looks like a pile of shit. Quick introduction. LA Satis. They have a new mechanic. The Tomb Keeper summons Tomb Worms, which is a big, fat, undead, shitty serpent, as a free spawn. A 1 per Tomb Keeper. They have a Citadel, so that's 1.5 Tomb Keepers per turn, or whatever his name is. Who cares? Point is, you get this. He's dormant. You do nothing for the first 12 turns. Maybe you expand a little bit. You don't even need to expand that much. You just make more and more Tomb Worms. More and more Keepers of Tombs, more and more Tomb Worms. And then eventually, when your Dormant God hits, you get all these Incarnates, which are insane. And you start spamming out everywhere in an aggressively hegemonizing Serpentine swarm. What does this Bless do? Very quickly. Blood Vengeance and Fear are simply checks that keep on accruing against most armies that make them eventually lose the battlefield. Fortitude and Reforming Flesh are just simple ways of making your HP pool last longer for those checks to give you time to win the game. Too Strong Vitae pumps you up a level of regeneration, gets you an extra one. Fire Resistance covers one of their 2 resistant weaknesses, but Fire is the one that matters more because most shock effects are going to just trigger Blood Vengeance again, and they'll delete. It's an acceptable weakness, basically. They'll delete most air mages before they can kill them. This build does not need any scales, does not need any Dom, does not need any research, and is very, very hard to deal with. Ask someone who's played against it if you don't believe me, which you might not if you haven't ever played against this or tested against it, because it doesn't look like it should be as strong as it is, but it is a reputation of being broken. In fact, it has given LA Satis a reputation of being straight up broken. And some people say that any variation of this, with just reforming flesh or Blood Vengeance, is good enough. But I think the full build warrants attention. Now, there are a few ways of beating this build. There is the Turbo Communion way, where you can, that is pioneered by Soron, so I won't go into detail on it because he may want to make a video on it, but you can beat it through producing way more skeletons than can be killed in a reasonable time frame through Turbo Communions, or you can use Glamour Magic, specifically the Mirror item, and False Damage, because False Damage does not trigger Blood Vengeance. So, for example, the Mirror item, possibly some Glamour Thugs, and Legion's Demise. Mirror item being the strongest because if you have a critical mass of them, again, the Serpents cannot clear them fast enough, and you will eventually win through mass. Legion's Demise, you have to protect the caster, but it'll eventually kill them, but it's a level fucking 9. And then Thugs, haven't tested them, but theoretically, False Damage Thugs. You can also defeat them through cubes. However, unlike most of the things you can defeat them through cubes, you need to mass quite a big number of cubes and cast quite a lot of buffs on them. So it's really not a reasonable counter. It's something that you might be able to counter them with late game if you've been amassing cubes all game the way that they have been amassing their Tomb Worms. So, what does that leave us with? The Haterater build. Can we build to haterate this? Now, you would think reasonably, no, you can't make a reasonable build, but reasonable men must do unreasonable things in unreasonable times, and hard times make hard men, and hard men make good times, and then good men make soft men, and then soft men make hard men harder, and then the unreasonable men are not in the unreasonable times, but today is not that day. And in a perfect world, builds like this would not exist. This is not a reasonable build, but these are unreasonable times, where reasonable men must do unreasonable things, and men must get hard for other men. and to create good times. So what we've done is we've taken LA Maragon. These scales drain to maybe not correct. That could be a death too. We could just take a couple off of our prod scales, but just showing you we have reasonable flex in this. A lot of dom because we need a lot of sacreds. We're going with Magic Res to counter the Blood Vengeance, Superior Morale to counter the Fear, Righteous Wrath because Fear needs even more counters, and Enchanted Blood because, yeah, why not? Or it gives magic resistance and a little bit of regeneration, so it should help us a bit. You could refine this further, but, and this isn't something that you really want to be walking into a game with if you don't know there's an LA Satis who's going to run at you, but, that's how you do. We've given Satis 42 worms. We have given ourselves more, but we've only given ourselves 40 Hands of Justice and filled out the rest with Flagellants. While Satis' ability to pump out Tomb Worms means they will often outnumber people, I feel like this is reasonable because Flagellants can be pumped out of any province, and it's not really unreasonable to take these numbers into a fight with broadly equal, maybe a little less, of cap-only Sacreds and Flagellants. We're also using our research, but not much of it. We are using the whatever magic resist spell is called. It's the Spell Ward. We are using Spell Ward over here. We also have guys casting Quickness, but I think that actually griefs us. And, of course, basic Sermon of Courage and Blessing on the Marignon side. As you see, the Quickness guys come in, and we start taking some damage. They trigger Righteous Wrath. The Quickness may have been a mistake. Maybe only do it if you can paint it on your guys. But as they come in, Flagellants start to die, and then the Hands of Justice arrive, and they have Blood Surge triggered, Blood Surge, Righteous Wrath triggered. Blood Surge, I don't know if that would help much. And so, we have Magic bonus -7, but we have Hostile Dominion as well. Slight disadvantage, but we have Blessed +6 and Righteous Wrath +6 for a mighty +12. Our morale is 19. Our magic resistance is 20. And slowly but surely, taking very little blood vengeance damage. Even our Flagellants have good morale and MR under this paradigm. We are going to take our Unreasonable Haterater Build and kill these Tomb Worms stone dead. So, oh, see, we even get runners. Damn. This build is goofy. I would not take it in a real game unless I knew it was a competitive game with an LA Satis in it, in which case it might be worth it just to clap their ass. I don't know how well this build expands. I don't know if it's reasonable for LA Mary, and I'd probably take the drain off of it if I was going to run it. But you can counter build even something as toxic as this LA Satis and kill it. And this is, I think, also reasonable casualty numbers. Hands of Justice took very few casualties. Flagellants took a lot, but they're so easy to replace. They are easier than Tomb Worms to get, I would even say. And, like I said, this doubling of numbers, I don't think is a real problem here, given that you can just slap a temple down and recruit Flagellants out of any province. They are basically extremely cheap, and this would let you do this maybe not on turn 12, especially with the drain, but somewhere near turn 12, so you can actually fight off that Satis rush if needed with a build like this, especially if you build temples early. Now let's talk about balance and reasonableness, because I mentioned this is not a reasonable counter. It's purpose built to counter this one specific build. It does have advantages late game. It counters probably every fear build, but and it does mean your guys will not rout in the late game, and you will be very, very magic resistant. So you paint some buffs on your guys, and they will have certain advantages. But it's not really a generic bless that you would want to take into a game, and that is kind of what I see as the design problem with LA Statists right now. It's not that they are unbeatable or can't be countered, but they are at a point where if you put this or a similar build on them, on the Tomb Worms, where they look like fucking this, then it becomes this very difficult game where the opponent has to know, like, complex, either they have to directly counter you specifically or know complex mechanics and like very specific magics in order to beat your build. However, the LA Statists, they don't have to do shit. They don't even have to play the game right. They don't even have to expand. They don't interact with any of the actual game mechanics. They don't have to do any of that to be strong. They can just play Snake.io and run around the field and eat shit without scripting, while their opponents, like I said earlier, are caught in this very complicated game of trying to counter their bullshit. So I think this is bad. Like, the current LA Statist is bad for the game. I wanted to resist that conclusion because they spent so much of last game being shit that I wanted them to enjoy some good things. But I think this is really unhealthy for the meta. I think that you could simply, what Soron's solution would be to make Tomb Chariots come into your Tomb Keepers instead of these, and what my solution is just have the Tomb Keeper site appear on turn 12, so you can't take a build that sacrifices your entire early game for this. Otherwise, yeah. So I think they are unbalanced in a way that's bad for the meta, even if there are ways of haterating them out. I'll also note that this is bringing in some Magic the Gathering lore, but during Mirrodin there was an Affinity deck. It was broken, and then there was a deck called Haterater, which was a direct counter build. But the problem is in the community, enough people just didn't want to play the top deck, and they didn't want to just play a Haterater deck that would fall apart against normal things. So Affinity ended up being dominant. And I think this is a similar situation where people don't really want to play a broken Statist build. Not enough people want to do it to make it like a problem in every game. Or enough people, and not enough, since they're not doing that, like a Haterater build is not really viable in that many games. But that just means it's a festering problem, because it's not going to get hated out of the meta. It's going to be that anyone who wants a easy kind of shitty win, or cheap win over people is going to take it, and normal people are not going to really take it in their games. And it'll keep the meta from rotating. So that's that. That's LA Statist. That's how you can do goofy shit to beat LA Statist, and that's that's what I've been testing instead of doing fucking useful shit. Been doing that, and I've been modding the game. HP out.